Sadly, most people in our country know Subhash Chandra Bose mainly for 3 or 4 events in his life. Resigning from the Indian Civil Service or ICS is one of them, the others being his election as President of the Indian National Congress, defeating Gandhiji's candidate, making an adventurous escape from his home to reach Germany and Japan, his formation of governments in exile, and raising the Indian National Army. Each of these achievements makes him worthy of hero worship, but restricting ourselves only to that prevents us from understanding the man that he was. Today, I will take up the incident of his resignation from the ICS. At this moment, you might be tempted to stop watching this video because you already know about it. But I would urge you to stay back and watch this short video till the end. There is much in this incident that is little known, but above all, it brings out a few characteristic traits of Bose that help us understand his subsequent life. First, let me take you through the events as they unfolded. How and why did Subhash decide to go for the ICS examination if he didn't want to join the service? Subhash himself hasn't written in much detail about the decision in his autobiography, An Indian Pilgrim. There, in that book, he has written that his father called him suddenly one evening and asked him if he was agreeable to go to England and appear for the ICS exam. He was given 24 hours to decide and reply. Subhash was taken completely by surprise, but he agreed to go. The decision was not an easy one. Letters exchanged with his closest friend of that time, Hemanta Kumar Sarkar, show that he was in a dilemma. But soon there was clarity. The letters show that he already had been thinking about going to England for higher studies to equip him for a career in education. Now, his father has made his plan to study abroad conditional upon his appearing for the civil services exams. Subhash was afraid that if he refused, his own plan would never succeed, and so he agreed. But what to do with the ICS exams? Subhash calculated that after reaching England, he would have only about 8 months to prepare. He was absolutely certain that he wouldn't make it in such little time. Additionally, the age limit for the exams implied that he would have only one shot at it. So once he failed to qualify, he could fully concentrate on his academics. But what if he passed? Well, he hadn't given it enough thought, but there was enough time to decide what to do. Hemanta tells us that he and Subhash had already discussed the idea of joining the civil service and then resigning it in order to set an example. Subhash set sail on 15th of September 1919 and reached London's Tilbury port on the 25th of October. His other close friend, Dilip Kumar Roy, was already there, having reached in June. After some initial difficulties, Subhash chose to take the moral sciences tripos and applied for the civil service. The subjects he had to study for the civil service examinations included English composition, Sanskrit, philosophy, English law, political science, modern European history, English history, economics, geography, including surveys and cartography. He had no intention to join the ICS, but that didn't mean that he would neglect his preparatory studies. Apart from their practical short-term objective, the subjects he studied gave Subhash a good theoretical grounding across the subjects. Modern European history particularly fascinated him, as he delved into the works of Bismarck, Cavour, Metternich. Dilip Roy found him reading Gibbon's volumes on the Roman Empire and writings of Garibaldi, Mazzini, Lenin, Kropotkin, etc. Subhash himself wrote later in his autobiography that outside my lecture hours, I had to study as hard as I could. There was no question of any enjoyment for me, besides what I could get from hard work. I devoted practically my whole time to preparing for the civil services examination. In the way of recreation, I attended the meetings of the Indian Majlis and the Union Society. The examinations began in July 1920 around 8 months after Subhash arrived in Cambridge, lasting for about a month. In any case, he felt underprepared, but the Sanskrit paper was a disaster. He could not fully copy the translation to English he had done in rough pages to his answer book, thus throwing away about 150 sure marks. Subhash informed friends and family that he was quite sure not to be selected. In about a month's time, however, he was completely taken by surprise when one night in September he received a telegram from a friend congratulating him. Next morning, he found out that the congratulatory message was for the result of the ICS examinations. He had come fourth among the candidates who took the exam. It was finally time to answer the question on joining the civil service. All this while, Subhash was keenly following the political developments in India and building up his own thoughts. By the time he had finished taking the ICS examination, Tilak was dead, the revolutionary movement had been suppressed, and Gandhi had consolidated his leadership in the nationalist politics, introducing a new method called Satyagraha. The non-violent mass movement of non-cooperation led by Gandhi, along with the leaders of the Khilafat movement, was gaining momentum. From Bengal, Chittaranjan Das had emerged as the most prominent leader, overshadowing extremist leaders of yesteryears such as Bipin Chandra Pal and Surendranath Banerjee. The moderates in the Congress had broken away to form a new political party. Responding to Gandhi's call, Chittaranjan had given up his legendary legal practice. India was apparently on the threshold of a political upheaval. Subhash could not but have been influenced by these developments. For advice, he now turned to elder brother Sarath, but he had more or less made up his mind. His exchanges with Sarath are more in the tone of convincing the family and sharpening his own arguments. Firstly, there was the ideological argument combined with his individual nature. I cannot say, he wrote, that I am delighted at the prospect of entering the ranks of the ICS. If I have to join this service, I shall do so with as much reluctance as I started my study for the civil service examination. Given talents, with a servile spirit, one may even aspire to be the chief secretary to a provincial government. National and spiritual aspirations are not compatible with obedience to civil service conditions. But for a man of my temperament who has been feeding on ideas which might be called eccentric, the line of least resistance is not the best line to follow. I may say without hesitation that if I were given the option, I would be the last man to join this Indian civil service. Secondly, there was the practical aspect. You may rightly say that instead of avoiding the service, one should enter its ranks and fight its evils, he wrote to Sarath. But even if I do so, my position any day may become so intolerable as to compel me to resign. If such a crisis takes place 5 or 10 years hence, I shall not be in a position to chalk out a new line for myself, whereas today there is yet time for me to qualify for another career. Writing to Sarath on 26 January 1921, he pleaded for his moral support. The question here involved is one of principle. On principle, I cannot accept the idea of being a part of the machinery which has outlived the days of its usefulness. I am now at the crossways and no compromise is possible. He had not yet written to Janakinath about his thoughts, but promised Sarath that he would now, and requested him to put in a few words to persuade their father. The final decision was reached by mid-February. On 16th February, Subhash wrote to Chittaranjan, the highest priest of the festival of national service in Bengal, asking him what work you may be able to give me in this gigantic program of national service, and telling him at the same time that his reply would equip him better to convince his father and brother. Subhash conveyed his decision to Sarath a week later. On 23rd February, he wrote to Sarath, I am fully convinced now that I shall be able to serve my country better if I am one of the people than if I am a member of the bureaucracy. As expected by Subhash, Janakinath opposed his plan, even going to the extent of professing that home rule was not more than 10 years away, implying a golden opportunity of holding a high position in a free India, but to no avail. If we all stick to our jobs and look for our own interests, I don't think we shall get home rule even in 50 years, Subhas argued back. Thirdly, there was his remarkable self-confidence. For a youngster yet to test the water of politics, he showed remarkable belief in his ability to make an impact. If I was sure that the movement would progress favorably, I could easily have waited. The apprehension of failure or slackening impels me to throw myself into the movement before it is too late to mend matters, he wrote to Sarath. On 22nd April, Subhas sent a short and straightforward letter to the Secretary of State Montagu, stating that he wished his name to be removed from the list of probationers and stating that he would return the allowance of £100 he received once his resignation was accepted. An unprecedented act, the resignation naturally caused a flutter. Among those who approached him to withdraw the resignation were the then Permanent Under Secretary of State for India, William Duke, lecturers in Cambridge, and Secretary of the Civil Service Board in Cambridge, Mr. Roberts. News about his decision to leave the ICS had already spread and created a sensation amongst the Indian community, much to his dislike. I dislike both sensation and popular applause, he wrote. Subhas was worried that due to the sensation created, news of his resignation might reach Janakinath, and he wanted to avoid that by all means. But much to his surprise and relief, he found support from his mother, who wrote to him that irrespective of his father's position, she preferred the ideal of Gandhi. The characteristic traits that come out from this event, I think, are the following. He would not hesitate to give up a assured life of comfort for his ideals, even if that meant a life of absolute uncertainty and difficulties. Sacrifice based on his spiritual grounding continued to define him. If he took up any piece of work, he would not do it half-heartedly, even if it was not to his liking. He would not take any step without analyzing threadbare its long-term implications. He was never a man to take impulsive decisions. Jai Hind.